What's good in the hood, YouTube? This is Crazy Samurai 71 here, bringing you another video. Today I'm bringing you a video on Uchuu Sentai Kyuranger episode 48. This is the final episode of Uchuu Sentai Kyuranger, which I can't believe because that means it's been a year since I started watching this season. And of course, with every season of Super Sentai, or even Kamen Rider, or any of these kind of Japanese shows that are like this, most of the time these seasons last about this long, where they're about almost an entire year, where every single week you're practically getting an episode. Not every week, but almost every week. So, of course, that's always amazing to think about, and it's incredible for me to always think that, but let's get started with the review itself. The episode, by the way, is called Echo in the Universe, Alright Lucky. And I'll say this much right now, it was a really good episode. It's sad again to see it go, but let's get into this episode. The episode starts off with us seeing the Kyurangers continuing where the last episode ended off, with us seeing Don Armage has finally gotten his final form where he's sucked in all the Plantium energy around the universe. So now all these people have been sucked in, the land, the everything has been sucked in. And so what ends up happening is the Kyurangers charge in and they end up attacking Don Armage. We end up seeing them transform into small, using small groups, transformations, which is cool. And what happens is that we end up seeing them fight, the Kyurangers fight Don Armage. We have Lucky even using Shishirai Orion mode, and Stinger using his, his arm weapon that he has, which is cool. I forget the exact name of it always, but it's a cool weapon that he does use occasionally in certain episodes that was introduced in his dedicated episode. So that's important, of course. So what does end up happening in this episode is that from here, the Kyurangers do fight a bunch. Eventually, Don Armage goes in for one big attack that basically makes all the Kyurangers de-transform in one attack. And at that point, Don Armage actually explains his origin, which is kind of nice to finally know. It's weird that they decided to do it very end of the season, but again, I'm not going to complain. As long as we know in some way, that's great. And, in the end, it really wouldn't have mattered either way, but I actually appreciate the fact that they did do this. It is something that is nice that they decided to do it, even if it was last minute. So what we end up learning about Don Armage was that he was born from the suffering and the despair in the universe. He is the embodiment of all suffering and despair in the universe, and that is why he wants to exist. He wants to continue that, and in his universe, it still exists, and it's strong, and that's what he believes that the universe will be, even though he is screwed up in that way. I mean, he's a really interesting character as a villain, and again, he's not a human, or he's not anything, really. I mean, I don't even know what he is. He's like a shapeless being in a way. It's weird, but somehow he has different forms. It's a really strange setup. But what does end up happening is that Don Armage ends up using a whole bunch of his Plantium energy to put bad thoughts, despair, suffering into the mindsets of the Kyurangers as they're on the ground, and they're getting all these bad feelings and negative feelings from Don Armage. That what happens is that they end up trying to get more joyful. They say different things and try to be more inspiring and show how being lucky is important, and being able to think about those you care for, or having a friend, and all those different aspects mean a lot, because in the end, those are the things that can help you the most and make you feel good and hopeful and joyful. And it's just a really upbeat situation on their ends. And it's them overcoming the negativity that Don Armage is putting on them, which is great. I love that whole aspect of it. They really do a good setup with it, because they each show a little clip that is from their past, from an experience, or whether it be a character that they've interacted with, whether it's one time or it's a character that they've seen throughout the entire season. And they do these small clips, which are nice little clips, nothing super long, but just enough to tell you a point that they're addressing, and then connect it with some idea, which is always good. And I love that, because they really did a good job of that. Eventually, the Kyurangers do overcome the dark forces of Don Armage, and then at that point, the Kyurangers decide to transform, helmetless at first, which is kind of cool to see. So we end up seeing that each of the Kyurangers transforms in this kind of beaten up look, which is really neat. So we see all 12 of them transform, from Lucky to Tsurugi. Really, really cool. And that all happens From there, they end up fighting him and doing different attacks against him. Eventually, Lucky even uses Shishired Orion mode, and they eventually end up doing individual finishing attacks that are really cool. In the end, what follows this is that Danarmage is turned giant. He becomes huge, and then at that point, the Q Rangers summon Kyutamajin, which is cool to see because actually all 12 of them end up utilizing it, which is something that they don't ever do in the show aside from this episode. In most episodes, it's like, you know, some of them use Kyutamajin and then the rest are on the ship, or the rest are using another mecha, or maybe some of them are using Kyutamajin but the rest are doing like 5 other mechas, or one other mecha. It really depends in every situation, but it's nice to see that all 12 were utilized, even if they weren't necessarily in the main portion of the cockpit, even if they were on like the shoulder bits. That's still kind of nice to see in some way that they decided to do that. So what does end up happening is that the Q Rangers do end up using Kyutamajin against Danarmage. Danarmage does a massive attack, and the Q Rangers do a massive attack back. This attack is super powerful, and eventually they manage to actually take out Danarmage. But instead of taking him out completely, he reverts back to, at first, his final form, where he's on the ground, and all the Plantium energy that he has in him basically disperses out across the universe. So then at that point, what happens is the people are revived, and then he reverts back to the form that was his weakened state in the previous episode before he got his final form. So what then ends up happening is that Danarmage still says that, like, I'm not done, and he still has energy or whatever, and what happens is that Danarmage ends up trying to, use his ability to take over bodies and everything and push Lucky out to outer space and make him, freeze and die in outer space. So then at that point, it looks like a really terrible situation, but Lucky won't give up. So then at that point, Danarmage is forcing him with his dark energy and everything, and Lucky eventually breaks through the dark energy, and the Q Rangers get ready to attack Danarmage. In the meantime, Lucky eventually flies in on what looks like to be a meteorite, and he crashes in, and the Q Rangers do a finishing attack, which is an EM-Star finish, which is really cool, and they manage to completely destroy Danarmage, which is really cool. So now Danarmage is completely destroyed. So then, at that point, the universe rejoices because everything is good. Several times over, we even see that the people around the universe are even trying to call out, power up Kyutamajin in that battle, power up the Q Rangers, and just trying to make them feel good and show positive energies. Because again, Danarmage is the forces of evil. So, the universe pouring in good, positive vibes, wanting the Q Rangers to save them. That is so good, and I like the fact that they did this. Sure, it's a little cheesy in some ways, but at the same time, I kind of do appreciate the fact that they went this route because of how the season has worked. So that's the thing that's great, that they've continued to support different ideas that have been a constant thing since the beginning, and it's fun to see that. What we also end up seeing following all this is that everyone rejoices, and then there is this thing that text appears and it says 2 years later. So that's something that I actually talked about in the past, that I was hoping that they would do some sort of epilogue, even if it was really short, to show what has happened to the Q Rangers after the Q Rangers have defeated Danarmage. And we got to learn that, which is really cool because everyone pretty much has something going on, which is neat. So for starters, we end up learning that apparently Stinger is now the commander. So that's cool. So he actually takes over for Sho, and Sho becomes the supreme commander. So again, that means that Sho's on top, but Stinger's right below him. So that's interesting. We also see that Raptor's working with Stinger, and Kotaro is going around to different constellation galaxy systems to restore them, since obviously dark matter had been causing problems for them. So in other words, he's on restoration. Then we end up seeing on Earth, it looks like Spada is actually he actually owns his own restaurant now, which has a 9-star rating because that's based off of the 9 Q Rangers, and Q Rangers, because 9, you get the point. So he's really successful. The Q Rangers are there, they're all celebrating, and everyone's going to go to Spada's new restaurant that he has that's super, super successful. We also learn that Tsurugi is again the president of the universe, which is cool. Champ reclaimed his belt title as professional wrestler. I'm trying to think what else we learned. Hammy is still learning her studies and is planning to become a teacher. I'm trying to think. Raptor has a crush on Spada that's even more obvious this time, but like Spada seems a little bit clueless in a way, even though Raptor is like really upfront about it. Like she practically falls into him, and it was a funny moment. And you even saw Tsurugi at one point like nod, and he just knew that like they're gonna be a thing. So that's just really sweet. What we also end up seeing is that in the meantime, Lucky and Garo are traveling around the universe, and it turns out that I actually was right. I remember speaking to someone about this, that it turns out that Lucky is still going to be king, but he is traveling to the ends of the universe, helping people out. Now, the ends of the universe point, that I said, helping people out, I didn't necessarily say, but that actually makes a lot of sense, and that fits his character pretty well, because, again, he's all about being a hero and rescuing people nowadays. So that's really fitting. I like that. Garo, of course, really supports Lucky in everything he does, so that also works out. And eventually they actually crash in on Earth near where the restaurant is. They rejoice, and the episode ends with some text saying thank you for this past year, basically. So that's really nice to see. Again, I've loved this season a lot. It is cool to see an epilogue at the end, and I'll tell you this much right now, I thought that Uchuu Sentai Kyuranger has been a really fun season overall. A lot of great things have happened. 12-member team actually worked out really well. Again, that was something that I never thought was going to work out so well, but in all honesty, they really did a good job with it. That was something that a lot of people were scared about when they first announced that there was going to be 9 members. But the thing that was great about it was that they didn't start off with 9. They started off with 3, then they moved into 4 in the middle of the first episode, and then they moved into 5. Then they went from 5 to 7, and then 8, 9, and so on and so forth. But you see, in other words, they took their time. And at the same time, they also learned how to get everyone to do something. That's the important thing. Everyone was given attention, even if it was small. Everyone had something. Lots of different villains, lots of story. Just a fun season. Such a big turnover from a couple of the more recent seasons that have happened, where I would have to say I was not as big of a fan as this season. For me, as I was with this season. This season was really good. Zyuohger and Ninja are great examples of that. Those 2 seasons, I didn't dislike them, but they definitely were not my favorites. Those were weaker seasons. Those were very unpopular seasons. Ninja more so than Zyuohger. But I will say this much right now, that like Kyuranger is definitely a season that if you're planning on watching Super Sentai, or if you're wondering or you want to get into Super Sentai, not a bad season to watch. Not necessarily the first season that I would choose to watch, just because of the fact that it isn't a typical season to see where you have 12 members in the end. But at the same time, it's still a good season. You can still watch it. I just think that, if you want to get a sense of how the show works, you may want to start with a different season. But it doesn't matter in the end. It's a fun time. It's a good season. Lots of great stuff happens. There's some dark moments. There's some really nice moments. There are some not as good episodes, but there are also some really great ones. A lot of the villains have great abilities. There's some complex things, and there's some things that are short-lived. Of course, it's always that way with different seasons, but I think that this is a season that I definitely am looking forward to seeing America get, because I do expect that America will get this season, and hopefully they will go for the route of actually staying a little bit more true to the Japanese show rather than going for something original, because to be honest with you, Kyuranger has been such a great season, and also because of the fact that Bandai of America and Bandai of Japan worked together on this. So, obviously they had some connections there, so I would think, if there's that connection, why wouldn't they take advantage of it and stay with what they had? That's what I'm hoping for. Again, we have no idea what they're going to do in America. They still haven't confirmed for a fact the next season, which is odd because in past years we usually knew a little bit earlier. We usually knew in January, and we're now into February. But that doesn't mean that we won't know this month or next month. it might turn out that we might not know for a while. It really depends. It is interesting. Of course, you have to remember that in past years, it also had to do with the fact that things were leaked. So keep that in mind, that like if we don't hear anything, it just might mean that we won't be hearing anything until probably May. And the reason why I say May is because May is usually when they tend to announce new brands and licensing for different companies. So for example, when it comes to like every season of Power Rangers, there's this major licensing expo that happens in May where they end up revealing the new logo and they end up revealing a brief synopsis of the new season of Power Rangers. Whether it's the super season or it's a standard season, they always do that at these licensing expos. So like that would be the latest I would expect us to know the name of the next season, by May. That doesn't mean that we'll know everything, but we'll know the name and we'll know maybe a synopsis by that point. We won't know the actors or any of that stuff until August, so keep that in mind. If you're wondering about the actors, you're going to be waiting a little bit longer, but that's very typical because that's when they tend to announce them. So keep that. So that's all I can say right now. I love New Year's Opinions. I personally enjoyed this episode a lot. I thought this episode was great. I love New Year's Opinions also on, have you enjoyed Uchuu Sentai Kyuranger overall? I have a lot. I thought the season was great. It really was an emotional season. Like, it's a season that I actually cried a bunch just because I loved it so much. I mean, I actually listened to the opening of this piano rendition this morning, and I was bursting into tears just because of the fact that it's like, oh my god, this season's over. Like, holy shit. And I'm cursed. Like, that's the thing. I don't go for any of that stuff. I don't say this much right now. Like, I was amazed by the fact that, you know, this season really affected me, because I haven't felt this way probably since, like thought a season was this good since maybe TheKingNappy or Kyuranger, because those seasons were good seasons. TheKingNappy is not one that everyone likes, but like Kyuranger was one that I especially felt it with. I mean, my god, that was a strong season. And of course, like, those are great seasons to watch, especially Kyuranger. Don't get me wrong, TheKingNappy is a fun season to watch. It's just not a season that everyone loves. And I totally respect that. You know, everyone has their favorites, and some people like the more underrated seasons. And also, TheKingNappy is a season that America never got, so keep that in mind. You know, if you're wanting to watch seasons that America never got, but you want to see them, not a bad season to watch. I'll say that much right now. So, I love New Year's Opinions. Are you also going to watch Lupin Ranger versus Power Ranger? I do plan on watching it. I hope the season turns out to be pretty good. It is going to be starting next week, so that will be replacing this. So that means that rather than me reviewing Uchuu Sentai Kyuranger, instead I'll be reviewing that, and more likely than not, I will stay with it. Hopefully it's good, if not better. You know, it's always good to hope. I don't necessarily say that I don't want the season to be as good or better, because like, I love this season, but at the same time, you know, I hope we get something that's decent. You know, I want it to be a decent season because, you know, Uchuu Sentai Kyuranger was a great season, but at the same time, you know, Lupin Ranger versus Power Ranger, I want them to be great seasons that I can also enjoy a lot. And again, this is another season where it's going to be a very unique interpretation of things, because again, last season we had a 12-member team. This time around we have 2 teams. So again, they're trying new things for another year, which is interesting to see, because, you know, when they try new things, it can always be a concern to some people, because when we go back to Gokaiger, after that we had Go Busters, which was a season that was such a weird season because of how the suits were designed. People really did not like the suits, and the season got a very mixed reputation overall because they were trying new things. This season, they tried new things, worked out really well. Next season, they're trying new things, so we have to hope that it turns out to be pretty good. So again, I don't know anything for sure, but it is interesting to see that they are trying new things, and I'm not against that. If they can do things and they can do them well, more power to them. That's all I can say. So I love New Year's Opinions. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe. I know I've been saying it like 5 times just because I have a lot to say, and I wanted to just bring this up here. I was going to do a final thoughts video, but I'm not sure if I'm actually going to do it now. Maybe. We'll see. It's hard to say right now just because it's like, I feel like I kind of addressed some of those points, and I'm sure plenty of you guys will talk to me. So keep that in mind. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next video. So until then, guys, I'm Crazy Samurai 71, and goodbye, guys. And goodbye, Kyuranger.